What am I looking at exactly? Hello everyone and welcome to the Mattoon Corner. I hope you all have been having a great 2018 so far. I know I sure have. I managed to finally buy a Nintendo Switch and I got a couple of games for it. That and I finally got a better job, so I'm feeling pretty darn good about myself. But speaking about the Switch, since I only really have a handful of games for it, I took the time to go ahead and download a couple of demos for the thing, mainly to have an idea of what other games I might want aside from Breath of the Wild and Mario Odyssey. I'm usually a fan of more action-oriented games, so imagine my surprise when Puyo Puyo Tetris of all things caught my attention. Now, I've played plenty of Tetris before, obviously, but I've never exactly been a big puzzle game fan. I guess Professor Layton would be the exception, but that's about it. And I had only ever heard the term Puyo Puyo every once in a while. I wasn't entirely sure what it was. So when I booted up the demo and started playing, I realized this is Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Hey, pitchforks down, let me explain. In one of my oldest videos, I said that I used to own a plug-and-play collection of Sega Genesis games, and one of them happened to be Mean Bean Machine. And since that was my only experience with any kind of Puyo-related material, it was the first thing my brain had associated the game with. After doing the proper research, however, it turns out that the Puyo Puyo franchise is actually a lot bigger than I had imagined. Like, a lot bigger. There's a surprising amount of entries in what's essentially a very intense game of Connect 4, and the series actually has a plot and characters and, well, I just wasn't expecting this much. You see, the original Puyo Puyo was in fact a spin-off to an RPG series developed by Compile called Mattoon Monogatari. The series was kinda dark all things considered, so it was reworked into a more light-hearted series, with a focus on this new puzzle mechanic inspired by the Puyo enemies from the aforementioned game, Tetris, and Dr. Mario. Because the Mattoon Monogatari series was never localized, the game was reskinned 3 times to feature other characters, one featuring Sonic characters, one with Kirby, and another featuring a completely original cast and story. The game was, however, localized in English for an arcade release, and that, my friends, is where we're heading now. For the next couple of videos, I'm going to take a look at as many entries in the Puyo Puyo series as possible, or at least, as many as I can find that have an English translation, official or not. Today, we're going to be looking at the arcade version of Puyo Puyo. So I'm going to say this right off the bat. If you've ever played any Puyo game before and you decide to play the first one out of curiosity, you might have a bit of a hard time playing this one. As it was the first entry, there are lots of things that weren't solidified at the time, and honestly, it shows. The goal of the game is to connect 4 colored orbs, your Puyos, to make them pop. If you pop a set of Puyos and it triggers more sets to pop, you get a chain. The larger your chain, the more garbage Puyo you'll send to your opponent. Garbage Puyo are essentially what's gonna screw your opponent over, as they can block important places set off chains, and they can only disappear by popping more Puyos around them. Keep in mind that this also applies to you. It's basically a race to get your chain off first. But Mattoon, you might say. In Puyo Puyo Tetris, if you both get a chain, the bigger chain can outpower the other and cancel any garbage Puyo you might get. That is true. In future Puyo games, you can negate your opponent's chain by countering with your own. This is known as offsetting. However, this wasn't present in the original game. If your opponent sends you garbage Puyo, it is going to fall. There is no way to counter it. Of course, this also applies to you, so there's that. The game was made so that you only need one button to play, meaning you can only rotate your Puyos in one direction. So you're gonna have to spam that button to get it right sometimes. Also in future games, you could flip a pair of Puyo in a tight corridor by tapping the rotate button. Once again, that was not present in the original game. I'll get back to gameplay in a second. I kinda wanna mention the story. It's nothing special really. You kinda expect that from a game this old. It used the Mattoon Monogatari cast, but because those games were never localized, all of the character names are really weird. Arl became Sylvana, Skidadara is Gobi Captain, Draco Dragon Woman, Rulu Lulu, and the elephant in the room, no, not that one, Satan's name was changed to Dark Prince for obvious reasons. Honestly, just chalk that up to being a localization of a Japanese game in the early 90s. Anyway, Sylvana here has to defend the Black Kingdom from the Dark Prince and sets off to defeat him. The Japanese version of the story explains how she learned a spell to pop Puyos, but it's essentially the same game, minus the name differences. As much as Puyo fans enjoy the characters, especially their interactions with each other, story is one of the weaker aspects in this series. You can kinda forgive this game in the series since it was still finding its footing, but I'll talk more about the other games when I get there. So fight the bad guy, save the world. Simple. The game also shows a couple of cutscenes in between matches to show off some of the characters and... yeah, like I said, this game is okay when it comes to interactions, but it's no Shakespeare novel. My personal favorite is the Shezo, Devious cutscene. Honestly, these names are weird. As for the game's look, it's not bad honestly. There isn't really much to look at though, just a few basic looking stages for Puyo battles, cutscene backgrounds, and character sprites. They're fine really, but nothing to write home about. Although many of Auro's reactions are pretty cute, I'll give it that much. One thing I will give the game credit for is the soundtrack. Every fight has its own track, and some of them can get you really in the zone. The Dark Prince's theme in particular is even more recognizable, as it was used as the multiplayer theme in Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, and later even in Sonic Mania. There are even a few voice clips in the game for Auro and the others, but they're kinda dry. Again, this was localized from Japan in the 90s, so I wasn't expecting much anyway. So until now, I've been mostly positive. Does that mean I find this game to be great? Well, I can admit the game can be fun, especially if you go and play 2-player with a friend, but there's one thing that hurts this game more than it should: the difficulty. Now, in Puyo games, the speed will go faster as you progress through the story. I noticed that in the other games I played as well. But the speed this game reaches is simply asinine. The Dark Prince boss battle is nowadays synonymous to fast-falling Puyos, but in this game, many of the fights before him are just as fast. Rulu, Shezo, Minotaurus, etc. All of them are essentially just as hard as the Dark Prince, except for one thing I noticed while playing them. The more I lost to some of them, the game would actually go slower. Not Draco levels of slow, but still noticeable. I don't think I saw it happen in the Dark Prince fight, the one that actually killer speed actually makes sense, but this feels like such a quarter-eater on an actual arcade machine. I know the game was released on the Famicom in Japan, but everywhere else this was an arcade exclusive. I hate this kind of gameplay mechanic, and I honestly felt I only beat Ruler once I realized the game actually did go slower when I lost. I don't think Puyo Puyo is a great game. I don't think it's a bad game either, it's just okay. This was Compile setting up a foundation for a fun and challenging puzzle series, and it worked. It was well received and birthed the Puyo Puyo franchise we all know and love. The game has flaws and its difficulty is pretty cheap, but it's by no means a controller-breaking rage fest. The ideas here would be expanded upon in the next installment of the series, Puyo Puyo 2, but that's for next time. In conclusion, Puyo Puyo is an okay game that you'll probably find more fun if you play it with a pal, or if you're willing to relearn how to play Puyo Pop with the original rules. Is this the game I'd recommend to newcomers? Not by a long shot. But hey, it's nice to see where a series started and see just how far it's gone. And that's all the time for today. Next time we'll be tackling the game's sequel, Puyo Puyo 2. So thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to like the video, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more. And as always, remember to be cool and be creative.